Hi there. I'm Davey Cretin for Cretin Classics, and today my guest and I are going to rank our favorite songs by the honored British hard rock act Deep Purple. So let me introduce my guest from the great YouTube channel Rock Show Critique, Joey Suto.
Hey, thank you. Great introduction. Happy to be here. We're going to have a lot of fun here.
Oh yeah, and this is Joey's second time on the channel because besides the fact that we're doing our top 12 Deep Purple tunes now, and if there's time, maybe some honorable mentions. We also did the Kinks a few months back on the channel. So if you're a fan of that British veteran rock act, you could check us out talking about the Kinks, the Davies or the Davis brothers, however you want to say it. But today we're talking about Deep Purple. And I have been actually, Joey was one of the first people to have me on his YouTube channel. So I have you to thank for me starting my own channel. You and a few others gave me the wherewithal and the power and the, the knowledge and the get up and go to do my own channel. There's a word I'm looking for, but it flew right out of my head. But whatever. Now, this show that we're going to do on Deep Purple, Joey is from the Rock Show Critique channel. I've been on there over a dozen times, so you can go to his channel and check it out. And we'll have him talk about his channel towards the end of the show. But this show was actually inspired by my friend in Australia, Peter Kerr. He has a channel called Rock Daydream Nation, and I was watching a bunch of his old shows because he's a huge Deep Purple fan. And some of the stuff came up in my recommended videos that I never saw from a couple of years back. And he's a huge Purple fan in all the offshoots, Dio and Rainbow and Whitesnake. And a show came up that he and his friend did their favorite 10 Deep Purple songs. So I grabbed a piece of paper and a pen and wrote down my favorites. And I had a show. And I said, whoa, that's a show, just like on Seinfeld. What a great idea for a show. Let's do a show. That's a show. So here we are talking about our 12 favorite Deep Purple songs. I'm going to turn it over to Joey from Rock Show Critique. Why don't you start us off? We're going to do two at a time. You're 12 and 11.
Okay. Well, first start off by saying this is a tough one. Man, it was tough kicking some songs off of here, I'll tell you. I mean, there was just so many great songs that I had to like kind of skip by just because these other ones just seemed to, take the spot. And when you get through my list, you'll see uh that it's not like a greatest hits list. You're not taking the very best, deepest Purple album where it's got like all those 15 or whatever it is, 12 to 15 great songs on there, and throwing them out here. No, this is a little different. We got a bunch of different type of songs to give people a good idea of how expansive this catalog really is. I mean, how long had it been around for?
Since 1968.
Yeah. And
And
Dylan came in what, 70? The
yes,
Mark II lineup. And
69, yeah, 69, 70.
yeah, I mean, just insane, and they even took an 8-year break. And yet they still have all this music out there and they keep on making new music even today. So tough choice. All right, so I'm going to start off my number 12. We're going to go to Japan for this one. Woman from Tokyo. It peaked at number 60, and it was the first song that was recorded from the album Who Do We Think We Are? And it's basically about touring Japan for the first time. And, obviously this album turned out to be their last album because of all this internal conflict, and there were a lot of things going on at that point in this, yeah. And but this is definitely one of the highlights on the album. It's amazing they were still able to continue to put out great music despite everything that was going on with all the turmoil and everything in the band at the time. So that's what I have for my number 12. And my number 11, this one I thought would have been a lot lower, but I've got Burn from the Mark III lineup. Peaked at number 105. And obviously, it's a song that features David Coverdale on vocals, Glenn Hughes on bass and vocals. Just a great classic riff that perhaps even rivals their most famous riff in Smoke on the Water. But Burn is definitely the highlight of the Mark III lineup in my estimation. And just love this song. It's just a great classic from beginning to end. And Coverdale actually picked it up and put it in his Whitesnake set a few years back, and he actually did like a whole Purple tribute album where he re-recorded songs from his time in Purple. And man, it was just great to see that one live. Definitely a highlight since I never got to see, you're never going to see Ian Gillan do that song live, so you knew Deep Purple
Right.
was never going to do it at this point. So that was a given there. So yeah, so number 11, I've got Burn.
Okay, and before I give mine, I forgot to ask you, when did you get into Deep Purple? Do you remember when you first heard them, what the first album you bought was?
Well, probably more than likely. It was back in my high school years. All my buddies, one friend got Whitesnake slided in, and everybody ended up getting it because every time we went somewhere, he would drive and that cassette would be playing in his car. And obviously that pretty much led, my other one of our other friends was big into Deep Purple. So the connection between Coverdale and Purple and John Lord and all that stuff, and then it caused us to go out and get a lot of the Deep Purple because that was around the same time Perfect Strangers had just came out too. So it was like everybody was getting all the Whitesnake catalog, the Deep Purple catalog, so everybody was getting into both bands. So it was just a great time to be a fan, and that's how we all got into them.
Okay, my journey was is slightly different. I've mentioned this before, but in 1977, I discovered the FM band and I started listening in New York City to the two big rock stations at the time. WPLJ played all the current and older rock songs, and WNEW-FM, they're still around, PLJ is not. And I heard all these great songs. They were by Deep Purple, and they would play Hush and Woman from Tokyo and Smoke on the Water, Black Knight, et cetera, et cetera. So I learned their catalog, and I always thought I bought the greatest hits. That first thing, Deepest Purple, with
Hmm.
guitar, with Richie's guitar on the cover, with the purplish blue background. But the first one I actually bought on vinyl was Perfect Strangers in '84 when rock radio started playing a bunch of songs from it. And they did play more than the two big hits, but more about that later. So I got into the, I mean, I heard them for about 7 years, but the first record I bought was in 1984, Perfect Strangers. And then when I started working at the record stores after that, then I started hearing a lot more of the albums. And that's when I think I picked up either a used CD or a used vinyl of Deepest Purple. And then I started buying the studio albums as they came out after that. So that's my journey with Purple. So let me grab my notes and say my number 12. And I do have a visual aid for this one. It is not on the British pressing, but it is on the American pressing. From Fireball, 1971, the Mark II lineup. And I am going to mention the song Demon's Eye is my number 12, written by all five members of the band. It was recorded, actually, you know what? It's not on the US pressing. I'm wrong. It was only on the British pressing Demon's Eye, but it's on this CD I have, which is a remaster with bonus tracks. No glare. I took the booklet out of the jewel box. Woo, woo, woo. So it was the last song recorded for the record in June of '71. So it's not on the US pressing. It's on the British pressing. And in on the American pressing, they had Strange Kind of Woman instead. This came out July '71 in the US and oddly enough, September '71. Because going back to the first album, for some reason, Deep Purple, even though they're a British band, their records came out first in America. Very unusual. I found that fascinating. I love the opening organ notes for the first 11 seconds, and then the band comes crashing in with a great groove and a sterling Ian Gillan vocal. And that groove makes the song as much as Blackmore's guitar riffs on the chorus. Understated John Lord organ solo follows the second chorus. Then Gillan hits some nice high notes throughout the song. Blackmore has a great solo 2/3 of the way through. And Richie also takes an outro solo for the last 45 seconds as Ian Gillan is vamping on the vocals. So it's a really good groove based song. And I always liked it. Demon's Eye, that's my number 12. It's a little over 5 minutes long. Moving on to my number 11. This was actually a single, little about 3.5 minutes from the Mark II lineup, a single from 1970. And because they were doing what the Beatles and the Stones were doing in the 60s in 1970, this is from the in rock period, but it's not on the record. And the song is Black Knight. Number two in the UK, number 66 in America. And I put down because there's Ian Gillan and Ian Pace. When I refer to Ian Pace, the drummer, I'm just going to say Pacey. That's how I wrote it in my notes. And Gillan, the singer, is just Gillan. So I put Pacey's groove and drumming propel this short but sweet song, as does John Lord's organ, of course. I love that brief bass and drum intro. And I wish it would have lasted longer, but it's only a few seconds. And Richie's main guitar riff on this song is great. And then 90 seconds in, he takes a sizzling solo, but that's Blackmore for you. And then you get a 20-second searing John Lord organ solo. And I wrote down, note Pacey's great drumming throughout this song, and Blackmore solos for 30 seconds as the outro music as it fades out. But Black Knight is a great song, so my number 11 is Black Knight. Number 12, Demon's Eye.
All right, off to a quick start here. We're really rolling already with some great songs. All right, so my number 10 is going to take us back to none other than the House of Blue Light, one of
Ooh,
my favorite Deep Purple albums.
wow.
And this song is what I call the unheralded gem from the House of Blue Light. It went over great on the House of Blue Light tour, seeing it live. Definitely one of the band's most underrated tracks in my estimation. I've got The Unwritten Law. Just love that song, and just a great song in my estimation. I just simply love that song. It kicks all the way through. Definitely not your typical Deep Purple song. It's totally a lot different than a lot of, like stuff on Perfect Strangers and stuff like that. They changed their style a lot when they recorded House of Blue Light. I think they tried to go a little bit more commercial, compared to the stuff that's on Perfect Strangers. But to me, number 10, Unwritten Law, great song. That's what I got for that one. And number 9, don't know if I'm gonna get a lot of hate mail for this one. Hey, but at least it's on my list. It's none other than Smoke on the Water. Um, it'd be a travesty to not have this song on the list somewhere. And it's the band's highest charting song, its most popular riff. You hear those first couple chords, you know exactly what it is. It peaked at number 4, and many call it the pinnacle song of the entire Deep Purple catalog. I love it, I just love, at this time of making my list, I just love it. Ninth best, 8 songs I like better than it at this point. But, you know, can't argue with success. It was a great song. It's their highest charting ever, and it is a classic, no doubt.
My favorite part of Smoke on the Water is the whole intro because you get each instrument coming in separately. First, you get Blackmore's guitar riff, you hear the bass, the drums come in, the organ, and then Gillan comes in. So I like the intro to that song. I think it's a great intro. And that's one of the reasons it's arguably their most popular song. I'm glad you have it because unfortunately I don't because the band has been around for so many decades. They have too many amazing songs. If I did this the way I normally do it, where I just go through every album, take 2 or 3 songs and get 25 to 40 songs and have to pare it down, I probably would have had 50 plus songs. So
Yeah.
I'm glad I just did it after watching Peter's video and it just sort of came to me and I said, oh, there's the perfect amount. You named your two, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you did.
10 and 9. Yep.
And it's also good to see a deep track from the House of Blue Light. You said you saw them on that tour?
Yes, that was the first time I got to see them. Thankfully, they played Rochester, New York, which is about an hour from me.
Okay.
That was
That was the first time I saw them too, but I saw them a little later on in the tour. I saw them where they were sandwiched in it was an outdoor stadium show in New Jersey. It was Guns N' Roses opening and Appetite was just starting to take shape and form. And they filmed the Paradise Theater video at my show, actually, the show I went to. Deep Purple was sandwiched in the middle. Aerosmith headlined. I think it was a summer outdoor show in New Jersey. I think it was 1989. And to me, Deep Purple stole the show. And that was the first time I saw them. The only time I saw them with the Mark II lineup.
wow.
And they did Child in Time. And to me, that was the highlight of the show. But more on that later. So moving on to my number 10 and number 9, I'm going to go to 1984, the album that came out September or October 1984. This was a number 48 single in the UK, and it hit number 12 on the Billboard US mainstream rock chart for 16 weeks, peaked at number 12. The title track to Perfect Strangers. Perfect Strangers, 5.5 minutes long. It's written by Blackmore, Glover, and Gillan. And although it's 40 years old, it's become a Deep Purple staple because the band have been around for almost 60 years now. It was covered by Dimmu Borgir, Jorn Landy, Yob, and my boys in Dream Theater. And Dream Theater even did it on BBC TV with Bruce Dickinson singing the lead vocals on this song. And I saw Dream Theater perform this, and they used an alternate name. They played a couple of songs under the name Nightmare Cinema, where they all changed instruments. So one guy was the bass player was playing keyboards, and the drummer was playing bass. They flipped all the instruments around, and it was a Christmas show in New York City in 1997. And Derek Sherinian was still in Dream Theater at the time. And I love Lord's distorted Hammond organ sound for the opening 20 seconds on this song. Then the band kicks in, boom. And you got to listen to that mint pacey drum groove and Glover's bass groove. I love Lords and Blackers, as I wrote down, because that's what Peter Kerr calls them, Blackers. Middle Eastern hypnotic groove in this song, which might remind you a little of Led Zeppelin with Kashmir, or maybe even Rainbow. So Blackmore is sort of tributing himself from the Rising album, of course. Gillan turns in an excellent vocal performance here, and 2:22 into the song, Richie takes a nice short chugga chugga solo I wrote down. And yeah, I wrote down this tune reminds me of 70s Kashmir by Zeppelin and Rainbow Stargazer. That's the name of the song. I dig the last minute plus with Lord and Pacey soloing while Glover and Blackmore keep the groove and the beat. So it's a great song, classic song, 40 years old. Love it. Perfect Strangers is my number 10. Moving on to my number 9. Going to go all the way back to 1972, the Machine Head album. And I have a deluxe version. It's a CD DVD set. So that's it, Machine Head. And I'm going to pick side 1, track 1, Highway Star, the Mark II lineup, 6-minute plus opener, covered by Dream Theater, Stryper, Metal Church, Faith No More, Typo Negative, Buck Cherry, and it's even on a 2012 Deep Purple tribute CD with Chickenfoot doing a live version with Sammy Hagar and, of course, Joe Satriani and other guys. And there's also a version on that album by former Deep Purple member Glenn Hughes, plus on guitar Steve Vai and Chad Smith from the Peppers on drums. This was a single. It didn't chart, but it's a stone cold classic. Glover adds some nice bass touches to the intro, and then Gillan shrieks at the 27-second mark with these nice layered multi-tracked vocals. It's like looped around, so he's singing with himself, and it's just a great intro. The whole band are firing on all cylinders here. John Lord has an outstanding solo on his Hammond organ at the 2-minute mark that lasts for about a minute. And then Richie steps into the solo spotlight about 3:47 in with a ripping guitar solo that lasts for about a minute 20. So he even outdoes Lord's length in the solo. And that's how you kick off an album. So from Machine Head, my number nine, Highway Star, and my number 10 was Perfect Strangers. Over to you, Joey.
Okay. Well, number 8 is a song that no one has mentioned yet, and it's the lead-off track on In Rock, none other than Speed King, which was also the first album from the Mark II era, and just a great song to kick off an album with. You mentioned Highway Star. I mean, Speed King would be another great song to open their show with, but it's kind of hard when you got Highway Star. I mean, that's like the ultimate their opening song. But Speed King is definitely one of the standout tracks off the first album there with them. And I don't know, I just simply love it. That's why it's as low as it is at number 8. Just a great riff, and the song just smokes from beginning to end. So that's what I got at number 8. Number 7, I'm gonna mention the song you just mentioned. That's none other Highway Star. It's opened more Deep Purple concerts than any other. It's the penultimate opening song for them. I mean, what else are they going to open up with? It builds up. It starts off with that nice bass and drums and like you said, this way everything kicks in there. It's just great, you know. Highway Star. They actually opened up with it well before they actually ever recorded it, which was an interesting thing I did not know.
Hmm.
I just find it very hard for them to open up with anything other than this song. Just tough to do. Some bands have that one song that they have to open up their show with because that's what, like Poison, great example. They open up with Look What the Cat Dragged In. They haven't really changed it throughout their whole career, very rarely. And Deep Purple, you got to open up with Highway Star. That's just the way it is. I'll tell you, man, being in front of that stage, because I was able to shoot them a few times from the pit. And this past summer, actually, I couldn't believe how powerful this song was, being right up against the front of the stage and have everything just, you're there to shoot the show for taking photographs. And it's so mesmerizing. It just takes you out of what you're trying to do to see these guys at their age still up there playing this powerful song that really gets the whole ball of wax going, man. It's just a great band. These guys are definitely Hall of Famers and worthy of every accolade they get, no doubt in my mind. So that's what I've got for number 7, Highway Star, and number
And if
8 was
I,
Speed King. Hmm.
okay, and I just want to give props. Oops, that's the wrong one. Sorry. You said you just saw the new lineup for the Deep Purple equals one album that came out last year, an excellent album. And you have a shirt from that tour, right? Yep.
Yep.
That picture's in the book, but I'm not going to waste time finding it. But a great album. Simon McBride now on guitar, and the band have sort of reinvented themselves because Steve Morse was with them for almost 30 years. And then he had to leave. Unfortunately, his wife was very ill. And because the band was based in Europe and Steve Morse is based in America, he left the band. They got Simon and McBride and continued on and put out this great record. So if you haven't heard it, you should go pick up Deep Purple Equal One. Excellent album. Okay, now I'm going to move on to we're doing 8 and 7. Yes. Wait, yeah, right? Correct?
Yep.
Okay, I lost my place for a second. Sorry.
Exactly.
Now, I thought number 8 would rank higher. And to me, this is a very deep cut. In fact, it's such a deep cut that the cut runs deep.
Oh boy.
This is from Slaves and Masters, the only album, and people called it Deep Rainbow because it's the only album with Joe Lynn Turner on vocals. Because once again, after the album you mentioned, The House of Blue Light, Ian Gillan, Richie Blackmore, they were fighting so much that Gillan left. So they got in Joe Lynn Turner for the Slaves and Masters album. And this is now Mark 5, if I counted correctly. 5 minutes and almost 40 seconds long from 1990. Love the cool 26-second intro. Blackmore then cuts deep with his incisive riff. Joe Lynn Turner's vocals are a bit growly on this song. It's not as clean as he usually sings, but it works on this song. and I love the pre-chorus on this song. Maybe this should have opened the CD because I think it's a little more hard hitting and more hard rock than the big song that opened it. King
King
of
of
Dreams.
Dreams.
That's it. Yeah, I was doing the pre-chorus into the chorus in my head. King of Dreams opened the album. That's a good song, and that was the single. I think one of the two videos from the record. But I think the Cut Runs Deep would have been a better opening track because it's such a hard rock song, and it really sounds like Old Purple. There's a riveting Richie solo, 2:52 into the song for about 50 seconds. And then 4 minutes into the song, it's John Lord's turn on the organ. And basically, through the end of this underrated barnstorming song, they just go off, these guys. I don't mind the female backing vocals in the chorus because Rainbow used them. So it reminds me of Rainbow, but it has that heaviness of Deep Purple. It's a really good song. If you don't know it, check it out from 1990. The Cut Runs Deep. That's my number eight. Moving on to number seven. Going to also go back once again to Machine Head from 1972. Before I picked the first track, Highway Star, now I am picking the last song, Space Truckin'. Ian Pace makes a great intro, even better on this song. It's a grinding, smashing song. Machine Head starts and ends with my two favorite songs. This has been the song Space Truckin', 4.5 minutes long. It's been covered by Iron Maiden, Overkill, and your good buddy Ace Frehley from Kiss. I love Pacey's fills. 21 seconds in, he does this amazing fill. And I've been listening to the drums the last week or so. I've been going through all the songs again. And Ian Pace is such an underrated drummer. He's so amazing. And I'm trying to hear his drums more, but there's just so much stuff going on in Purple with four instrumentalists and a singer that it's a lot to hear. And you're listening for your favorite parts. And sometimes you ignore the drums. But Ian Pace, phenomenally underrated drummer. Glover and Pacey make this song I put on Space Truckin'. 2 minutes into the song, you get that vocal acrobatic by Ian Gillan where he sings, "We got music in the solar system." And to throw it back to a personal anecdote, back in the day, the record stores, when we played that song, I would always try and hit those notes where Ian Gillan sings, "We got music in the solar system." I'm not going to do it now. And my coworker said, "You were too high. You overshot it." And I said, "Really? I didn't even think I hit it." He said, "No, you went too high. You got to do it again a little lower." So back in the day, I could hit those crazy notes. But Gillan, phenomenal singer. Unfortunately, sort of blew his voice out. And now he's 77 years older, so he can't hit those crazy notes. That's why they drop Child in Time. Sometimes I feel like screaming, and some of the other songs where he sings it down a little, but he still sounds great for a 77-year-old. I saw them a few years back, not as recent as you. Richie's solo here is short but sweet, and the whole thing works. And sort of in the middle, you get a drum solo more than anything, more than the guitar solo that's only 15 seconds. You get Pace on the drums doing this beat and this groove. So it's weird that there's sort of a drum solo in a song that was a big hit on rock radio, yet somehow it works. So I love it. So Space Truckin' is my number seven, and The Cut Runs Deep, my number eight. Over to you.
All right, very good. All right, so we're on number six now here, and I'm going to dig into the album Perfect Strangers for this one here. The track that peaked at number 61, written by Blackmore, Gillan, and Glover. And that's none other than Knocking at Your Back Door, just a classic song from this album. The song starts off very auspiciously slow and steadily kicks right in. Um, just a great song. Definitely that could be another concert opener possibly if they ever did decide to retire Highway Star. But cool song though. Just knocking at your back door, hearing that one live and seeing it live over the years was just great because it was one of the songs that they kind of sporadically played after a certain point. Um, and it was unfortunately, matter of fact, both that one and Perfect Strangers were retired on this past tour. So hopefully they'll go back to them again down the road if we get the pleasure of seeing these guys ever again. Um,
I think we
but
will.
Knocking at Your Back Door, just a great song. That's why it's high on my list at number six. Number five, definitely it's going to take us down to another track off of Who Do We Think We Are? And, like we were mentioning about this album, the last album that with the Mark II lineup before they reunited for Perfect Strangers, I got Rap Bat Blue. Just a phenomenal, hard-hitting, standout song, an underrated gem in my estimation. Ian Pace's drum pattern was what the song was built around. Just a phenomenal song, and it's a shame they never really touched it live. They might have played it on a small tour of Europe one time or two for a couple shows, but other than that, it's never been touched. But I remember it was weird because our rock radio station kind of folded up back in like 1985, so we were kind of left without one. So another station kind of took over some rock, added some rock to their mix, and they would actually play like blocks of artists. So in Deep Purple, they ended up playing a block of Deep Purple, and they added Rat Bat Blue on there. I said, I never heard this song before. At that point, I didn't have their whole catalog and all that kind of stuff, because this was like, I want to say about 86, 87, somewhere around there. And man, the first time I ever heard it, I fell in love with it. Just a great song, and it's definitely stuck with me ever since. So that's why I've got it here at number five, Rat Bat Blue. Number six, Knocking at Your Back Door.
Another great deep track. Very cool. That is a good song. It didn't make my list, unfortunately. So moving on to my number six, a song you just mentioned from the reunion, a little over 7 minutes, Knocking at Your Back Door, Perfect Strangers, 1984. Roger Glover, Hat Lover, has some spirited, standout bass playing throughout this exquisite song. And after nearly a decade away from the fray, the band return in resplendent fashion here. John Lord, the Lord of the Boards, begins the tune with his organ, and his organ has some, besides his organ, he's playing some Jaws like keyboard stabs. Dun, 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 dun. It always reminded me of Jaws. And then Glover comes in with that cool bass line. Excellent bass line. And then Pacey kicks it in with this perfect beat. And then Blackmore joins it. And it's like Smoke on the Water, where they all come in individually and it builds up. And then you get this excellent groove. And you get, of course, Ian Gillan at his best with his nutty lyrics here. And I'm just going to quote: the log was in my pocket when Lucy met the rocket. She never knew the reason why. End quote. Those great lyrics of Ian Gillan. Oh, yeah. An excellent pre-chorus leads to an even better chorus, and the band never slowed down on this song. You get a sterling six-string solo from Blackmore halfway through the song, and then he also has an elongated outro solo for well over a minute at the end of the tune as the band burns behind him. Like you said, this was actually number 48 in the UK, and it was number 12 on the US Billboard mainstream rock chart for 16 weeks. So it was another one of the big radio hits from the album. Knocking at Your Back Door, my number six. Moving on to number five, an album we neither of us has mentioned yet. From the Mark III lineup, the album is Stormbringer. Look at that great cover with the Pegasus, with the wings. I love this album cover. One of my favorite Deep Purple album covers. And I'm going with the title track, Stormbringer, written by Ritchie Blackmore and David Coverdale. It's only a 4-minute song, but it's a great way to kick off the record. It was a single. I think it was the third single from the record. No chart action. Never played on rock radio. Maybe it was played in 74, but I didn't start listening to the FM radio until mid to late 77. I never heard this song on rock radio. What an amazing kick butt song to edit myself at the last second. It's a power rock song. It's a great way to start off the record. Great groove. Some snazzy synth work from John Lord, who only started playing, he used to play piano and organ, his Hammond organ through the Leslie speaker, and he got that great growling sound. But couple of albums before this, he started playing synths a little here and there. But I love his synth intro. It's an insistent driving groove throughout with vicious vocals from David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes. He does the high part, of course. Love Pacey here. He's all over his kit throughout this song. And Richie Blackmore has an outstanding guitar solo. And I love the dead stop ending on this song, which is something they didn't do too often. They have a bunch of fade outs. So Knocking at Your Back Door from 84 is my number six. And from 1974, Stormbringer, my number five, with that great album cover. The Pegasus flying through the air. Over to you, sir.
All right. Well, we're getting down to the wire here now. It was, this is where it got tough, but this one will probably be somewhat of a surprise, I would assume, for people expecting my next song to be another Mark II song, because it's not. I've got at number four from the album Perpendicular, none other than Sometimes I Feel Like Screaming, the first album to feature Steve Morse, and this was one of the first songs that was recorded with Morse. He basically came up with the riff when he was noodling around in the studio, and then Glover and Lord asked him, "What do you got there? What is that?" And they ended up building the song. And man, what a fantastic song this song is. This is one of the highlights of the later catalog, no doubt, in the Morse era. Uh, just love this song. Can't say enough about it. Just a classic song. You'd expect a song title like that to have a lot of screaming in it, but it's kind of a more mellow song for Gillan for the most part. He does get into it near the end where he starts doing more higher vocals and stuff like that, but it's a very cool song though, and it's unique, different. That's what I liked about it to begin with, and on top of it, it's very catchy. So definitely a great song. And I've got it all the way up to number four. So, that shows you how much I like it. And so my number three is going to be an old standard classic of the band. I've seen them do this one live the few times that I got to see them. And it's none other than Strange Kind of Woman, which, quite simply, folks, this is how rock and roll is done. No other way to put it with this gem of a song. Peaked at number eight in the UK. Didn't chart here. The song was not on the Billboard 100 at least. The song was not part of the Fireball sessions, but it was included on both the UK and the US version. So that was kind of interesting. I didn't realize that in the past because I did have it on my Fireball version. I got the US version. So, and I think on the UK version, it replaced Demon's Eye on some of the original
Yep.
pressings. Yeah, very interesting how that whole thing went about there. But so Strange Kind of Woman, just a great vocal by Gillan, and of course, the rest of the band does not let anybody down. Just a great song, and that's what I got here at number three. Back to you.
Okay, we did not compare lists. In fact, when we talk, sometimes we give each other hints as to what we're doing. No hints this time, but my number four is also Sometimes I Feel Like Screaming from Perpendicular. Now, I remember this is a 7.5 minute song, by the way. It was a single overseas and it was cut down to like 4.5 minutes. I don't even want to hear that version because you have to hear the full 7.5 minutes. This is the Mark Six lineup, if I counted correctly. And it came out overseas in February of 96. I remember it wasn't out in America yet. It eventually came out on a small label called CMC International in the States here. But it came out as a European import first, and I was working at the record store, and most of the UK import CDs came without shrink wrap. They were open. So I put it on and I played it and I fell in love with basically the whole album. But my favorite song, like you said, Sometimes I Feel Like Screaming, written by the whole band, co-written by the whole band. And I think it came out a few months overseas before it finally came out here. And this is the song I wrote down that spoke to me the most from the record. It starts off with Steve Morse on acoustic guitar and John Lord playing the organ. So it starts off very mellow. And then Gillan comes in, very low key vocals, very quiet, like he's singing a very somber song. And then suddenly the rhythm section kicks in, and Steve Morse starts to wail on the electric guitar. And to me, it reminded me of, it's in the vein of, it's not the same. Gary Moore, about 5 years, 6 years earlier, late 80s, but even more, had that song Still Got the Blues for You with that great tone on that solo. And that's what Morse reminds me of. It's sort of like he's doing a tribute to Gary Moore. And I just love the tone that Steve Morse gets on his guitar. That bow now 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 now. It's great throughout the song. The song has a very catchy chorus, and the entire group is on point here. Because without Blackmore in the band, they reinvented themselves by getting Steve Morse in the band. Very different guitar player from Blackmore. He was great with the Dixie Dregs, made some great solo records. Steve Morse band, phenomenal guitar player. I've seen him live with Deep Purple and without Deep Purple. And every time I hear that Morse doing the guitar solo in the song, it just sends me to my happy place. This is one of my favorite Deep Purple songs. And at the time, Gillan could still shriek with the best of them. It's over 30 years ago this song came out, or about 30 years ago. But now on this album, instead of doing it the way he did it really back in the early 70s on Child in Time, he's doing it in a more mature, echo drenched way compared to 1970. I wrote this as a hauntingly beautiful song, and no thanks to the single edit that cuts out 3 minutes of the song. So our number fours are the same. Moving on to my number three, I'm going to hit an album and a song that you mentioned. And I think it's a gold CD. And this is from 1973, the last of the Mark II lineup. Who do we think we are? And I'm choosing the same song you did earlier. My number three is Woman from Tokyo. It's almost 6 minutes. The whole band wrote this. Hit number 92 in Australia, where Mr. Kerr is from, 55 in Canada, and like you said, 60 in the US. This was always my favorite FM rock radio hit by the band when I first heard it. This is the song that hit me, Woman from Tokyo. Starts with a mint Ian Pace hi-hat work, and Richie's biting guitar riff comes in, followed by Glover and Lord. Glover has a nice funky bass sound with what almost sounds like finger popping sounds. And I adore the elongated middle eight section with Lord's piano and Gillan's vocals. And I think it's possible they're using like a backwards drum effect on Pacey's drums, just the way it almost sounds like they reverse the tape or something. But it's great. And Pacey's China work on this song, the way it kicks back in, excellent. Gillan's high note near the end of the 4 minute mark is awesome. Lord's honky tonk piano shines throughout this song. This is a perennial Dave fave. So at number three, Woman from Tokyo. Number four, like you, sometimes I feel like screaming.
All right. Very good. Wow. This is it. We're going down with the top two tunes. Trademark that one. All right. Well, number two, and the weird thing was had no idea this song was going to place this low on my list. Yeah, I figured it'd be on my list, but I just didn't expect it to be all the way down this to my bottom two songs here. But yeah, I've got the title track from the 1984 release Perfect Strangers. Um, I always loved that one and Knocking at Your Back Door. I always felt it was really hard to choose which song I like better between the two of them. But today I love Perfect Strangers just a little bit better, obviously from the placement. Oddly enough, one of the very few Deep Purple songs to not include a guitar solo, oddly enough. And believe it or not, Mr. Blackmore, I don't know when he said this, but he did call it at one time his favorite Deep Purple song. So I don't know when that was said or anything like that. All I know is I did see some quotes on it. And considering it doesn't have a guitar solo, you'd figure, wow, that'd be shocking. But the song is great. How can you argue with it? It's just a great song. It's pretty much the song that brought them when they came back with, the reunion here with the Mark II lineup and the title track on the album. It was so strong they decided to name the album after it, and just a fantastic song. That's what I got for number two. And number one, as you probably would guess, it's none other than the longest song on this list of mine, time-wise. And we're going with Child in Time. Just a gem of a song. I've really grown to appreciate this song much more over the years. And I feel it's the best vocal performance by Ian Gillan on record. It showcases his whole vocal range. And not only that, it also gives the a good look at the band itself with the instrumentation, particularly John Lord and Blackmore. And Gillan's always said the lyrics were inspired by the Cold War. It's an interesting song. Starts off really slow, and then it just gets going with the high vocals and screaming. And yeah, they retired this one, 20 years or so ago in concert. I actually had a chance to ask Roger Glover about this one. And he said, "Yeah, we're never going to play that one again, unfortunately." Yeah. What can you say? There's no way Gillan can pull it off anymore. That's why they kind of retired it back. I think it was 2002 or something like that when they got rid of it out of the set. But just a great song. It's a shame they can't perform it anymore. But I got to see it once, like you said, on the House of Blue Light tour. And man, what memories does that leave a lasting impression for sure. And that's what I got. Number two, Perfect Strangers. And number one, my all-time favorite Deep Purple song, Child in Time.
Sweet pumpkin pie.
Wow.
Moving on to my number two, a song you mentioned earlier. So we have a lot in common. It was number 105 in the chart in 1974. The first song you hear from the Burn album. It's a promo CD. It's stamped. It's upside down.
Ah, there you go. Yep.
From the Burn album, the title track, Burn. This was not overplayed on classic rock radio, and that's why I love this song so much. I found it later on, probably in the mid to late 80s when I got more into that back catalog. And why isn't this played on rock radio? But it's to the benefit of us and the song because it's not overplayed like maybe Smoke on the Water and a few other Deep Purple songs. But the whole band smokes on this hard rock gem. And what is Ian Pace playing on the verses? He's doing some kind of crazy jazz solo, which is just every time I hear the verses come in and I'm listening to the drums and I have no idea what he's doing. I'm not a drummer, but he's just doing some phenomenal drum work. He's soloing as the band are playing. It's amazing. Uh, the band sound revitalized and comes storming out of the gates on this number, track one. And old Gov Coverdale, as I wrote quite the bewitching tune about a witch. He acquits himself quite well on the lead vocals, and Glenn Hughes shines on the bridge lead vocals when he comes in with the higher vocal. One of my favorite Blackmore extended guitar solos is here, and Lord, a couple of minutes later, when Lord does his multi-layered keyboard solo, phenomenal. It never ceases to boggle my mind. It's like Tony Banks in Madman Moon from the Trick of the Tail album. I'm trying to count how many keyboards Banks is playing, and I try to do the same thing with John Lord's playing here because he's playing. It's got to be multi-tracked. A couple of different. I think it's about three, maybe four keyboards at once. Sounds amazing. It all comes to a crashing end. What a song! My number two, the title track from the Burn album, Burn. And once again, we have a match at number one, Child in Time. My favorite song from the Mark II lineup, my favorite song from In Rock. This was number 36 in France. Could you believe it? I
Hmm.
think the single had because it's a 10-minute, 20-second song. Pretty sure the single had the first half on the A side and the second half on the B side. number 36 in France, number 26 in Belgium, and number 10 in the Netherlands. So you're talking 55 years ago, this was a hit. And this is a heavy, heavy song from the heaviest album, Deep Purple In Rock or In Rock, whatever you want to call it. So there's been a little bit of confusion about that over the years. And I thought this was Gillan's anti-war screed about the Vietnam War, not the Cold War. I always thought this was about the Vietnam War. This is an epic studio song that breaks the 10-minute mark. It's possibly the calmest song on In Rock, which is a very heavy album, but it's still a frenetic masterpiece. And it's one of the building block albums of heavy metal, as has been stated on zillions of other YouTube shows. Purple would never again go balls out heavy as they do on the In Rock album, at least on a studio record. Their live records could be pretty chaotic and heavy. Pacey's cymbal China work at the beginning, it opens the song, and Lord's on his Hammond organ, and it starts out very calm. Gillan starts off with a whisper, but you could tell as the tension is slowly building that he's going to roar. And roar he does on the vocals. Hands down, like you said, I wrote down his greatest vocal performance, to me anyway. Blackmore's extended solo is chaotic and frankly almost out of control. Like the whole thing, the whole song is going to go spinning off its axis. And Lord and Blackmore build the tension until it all stops on a dime at like the 6 minute mark, little after the 6 minute mark. And then it starts all over again with the band taking off in full flight, and they land on the moon less than a year after Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon. This is a true Titanic tour de force, easily my favorite Deep Purple song. The moon landing was in July on July 20th, 1969, and then when this came out June 3rd, 1970, less than a year later, it's the second time that man landed on the moon, and it was done by Deep Purple with this amazing song, Child in Time. You have to hear it. It's epic. It's prog. It's hard rock. It's proto metal. It's 1970. I mean, this album and Uriah Heep and Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin too were the big four building blocks in heavy metal, and Deep Purple were there right at the get go. So that is my number one. We got a couple of extra minutes, Joey. So why don't you tell everyone your honorable mentions?
Okay, very good. Just want me to list the three of them off then,
Yeah, you
all
could
in a
talk
row?
about them. You could
Okay.
say a few words about them.
All right. What would be my first honorable mention is going to be going back to the album entitled Rapture of the Deep.
Nice.
And I've got a song called Clearly Quite Absurd. The album was produced by Mike Bradford, and what emotional singing from Gillan once again on this song. Clearly quite absurd. Definitely the highlight of Rapture of the Deep album for me. And that's what I had for my one honorable mention. And the second one,
If I could just add,
yeah,
it's to let everyone know out there, it's from the Steve Morse era. So once
yes.
again, a song from the Steve Morse era. Nice. That's a really good deep track. Excellent pick.
All right. And then I got another deep track because this one is not a Mark II track as well. It's a Mark, I think they're up to five at that point. Going back to the Slaves and Masters album, 1990, for the great tune King of Dreams. I just love this song. Joe Turner does a phenomenal job on it, and was the first video from the album. And yeah, it's weird because you hear these guys talking about this album later, years later. John Lord and Roger Glover, they never really considered this a Deep Purple album. So it sounds like, they were kind of forced to use the name type situation, from what I understand. I don't know. Song did peak at number 70 in the UK, but that's the only chart action that I saw, at least out of the main charts. So that's what I got from my other honorable mention. My final one is a song that you mentioned earlier in your top 12 tune countdown there, and none other than the powerhouse Space Truckin' from Machine Head. Features the fiction theme, like you mentioned. It closes out Machine Head, and they've typically used it to end their main set in concert over the years as well. And an interesting note was in concert, this song sometimes would last like 20 minutes. And
Yeah.
that's reminds you kind of like what Led Zeppelin used to do with Dazed and Confused. They would improvise up on the stage and stretch things out. And yeah, 20 minutes, and then they'd leave the stage and play. People would go nuts, and they'd come back out for a couple encores, and great way to end it. Considering it's a shorter song that's on the album, to make it go 20 minutes is very interesting to say the least. But I never seen a 20-minute version of it, but I did see it live a couple times.
Nice.
So that's what I
Great
have.
song.
Yep, clearly quite absurd, King of Dreams, and Space Truckin'. What do you got for your honorable mentions here?
Well, just a comment on King of Dreams. It was played on at least New York City rock radio, the stations I used to listen to from Manhattan, and it
Hmm.
did chart on the Billboard mainstream rock charts. I just didn't write down because it's not one of my honorables or picks, but it did chart on the Billboard mainstream rock chart back in 1990. My honorable mentions, I'm going to go to a record that neither of us mentioned here,
Ooh.
a song from the Mark II lineup, but we have not mentioned this record. A nearly 6 minute song from July of 1993, the title track to The Battle Rages On, the song The Battle Rages On. This was number 22 on the Billboard mainstream rock chart, but it only was there for 6 weeks in the summer of 93, like August, September, late summer. My favorite thing about this song is Blackmore's guitar riff. It's a great riff. And Joe Lynn Turner said after the fact that Blackmore was so dissatisfied with this album because this was the last Deep Purple record he did in 93, The Battle Rages On, that he referred to the album instead of The Battle Rages On, he called it The Cattle Grazes On. Uh, Pacey has also some fine drum work on this song. Same with Lord's different keyboards throughout the song. And Gillan, I noticed, double tracks his vocals throughout this song. And Blacker's solo halfway through is really cool, but it's really all about that snaky main riff. So I love the guitar riff in the song. So that's a real deep cut. Title track to The Battle Rages On from 93. Moving on to my number 14, 4.5 minute song from their first album, Shades of Deep Purple.
Oh.
Nick Simper on bass guitar and Rod Evans on lead vocals. Written by Joe South, I'm talking about the song Hush. This was their first big hit in America. It hit number 4 in the States, number 2 in Canada. It starts out with a howling wolf, and then the band comes crashing in, and the first thing you hear is Blackmore's guitar skills and Lord's roaring organ, even in 1968. You hear Pacey's unique drum style throughout the song. Nick Simper is holding down the bottom end on the bass, and Rod Evans does a good job on vocals. But I mean, there was no way he could do those shrieks that they needed Ian Gillan to do. So eventually, Ian Gillan replaced Rod Evans, and Roger Glover replaced Nick Simper. This is a catchy hook-laden single that unleashed the band on an unsuspecting world. This was the first Deep Purple hit. Moving on to my number 13, my third honorable mention, if I put these 13 to 15 above my top 12, a 4 minute song going back to Mark II lineup, an album we've mentioned multiple times, Perfect Strangers from late 1984. This song was number 20 on the mainstream rock chart in Billboard for 9 weeks. Back when I was in the Ramones tribute band, the drummer in the band Donnie and I went to see a Deep Purple tribute band play locally on Long Island, New York. And we got there, and it was a Sunday night, I remember. It was a holiday weekend. I don't remember which holiday. We went to see this Purple tribute band. There weren't a lot of people in this local bar slash club. So the band started off a little late, and the keyboard player started playing the intro to this song, Nobody's Home, 4 minute song from Perfect Strangers. And as they started the song and the band kicked in, someone came over and told them to stop the music. There was a discussion for a few minutes, and they canceled the band because of the turnout. We got the money back, we paid at the door, and we went home. So the only time I saw this live, it was just like the keyboard intro because as the band kicked in, the owner or the manager of the bar just said, "No, you guys aren't playing here. You didn't bring enough people." And that's what happens sometimes at local gigs. It's crazy. So
Hmm.
we didn't even see one complete song. So it was such a bummer. But I've always loved this song. It starts out with that great spacey synth solo by John Lord, such a great keyboard player. Much missed too. I mean, Don Airey is great. He's been a journeyman keyboard player for 50 plus years in rock and roll, playing with Ozzy and Coliseum and zillions of people. And he's really good in the band, but there's only one John Lord. And he just shows it at the beginning of this song. And then a cool groove comes in, led by Blackmore's once again snaky guitar line with Glover doubling him on the bass. And you really hear the bass if you listen. He's doubling what Richie's doing on guitar, and Pacey's drums are really high in the mix. You just hear him pummeling the drums in this song. A super brief guitar solo by Blackmore leads into a much longer organ solo by Lord. Blackmore has his say at the end with a longer extended solo that leads into a slam bang ending, a hard charging Deep Purple deep track. Nobody's Home, highly recommended from Perfect Strangers if you don't know it. So those are our songs. We had some crossover, Joseph. Maybe a little more than usual. Usually we have such different songs, but we did have some crossover. So
Yeah.
before we go, why don't you tell everyone what's going on your channel, Rock Show Critique?
All right. Well, we're featuring a lot of different things on it. Right now, we're kind of focusing in on our new series we started a couple weeks back called From the Bottom Up. That seems to have really become very popular. We just take a known album and I rank them from worst to best, and we go through them real quick on a quick video, usually about 10 minutes on average, so they're nice and short, gives somebody a chance to dig into one of their favorite albums. Hopefully, if we're hitting right on there, we've gone through a couple like Who's Next from The Who and Zeppelin Physical Graffiti. And our latest one actually includes we just did Aerosmith's Toys in the Attic. So yeah, we've done quite a few here. So there's a lot of good ones out there, and definitely if you get a chance, please subscribe and like our videos there on Rock Show Critiques YouTube channel. We also have the website as well. We got some concert reviews and interviews and a lot of other things, all music related. So stay tuned because the concert season may be kind of dead right now, but come February and March, should start amping up a little bit around here for sure, and we'll have much more content available for sure.
And you show your cool photos in all your reviews on the website too.
Yeah, we
That you
usually
take
have
from
like
the photo pit.
when they let us. Nowadays, it seems like over half the shoots are from soundboard. It's crazy.
Okay, well,
But
as long as you can take photos, that's pretty cool.
yeah,
And this is Cretan Classics. I am Davey Cretan. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I have more shows coming up. I have more guest appearances on other channels. I've been on Rock Show Critique over a dozen times. I think I've been in 16 episodes. We've done stuff
oh well.
on Kansas, on Styx, on Triumph, Supertramp, Dire Straits. A lot of shows I've been on with you. Peter Gabriel, we rank Peter
Hmm.
Gabriel's catalog. And some of these are old shows, but you'll see me on Rock Show Critique. And if you look down in my playlist, I have a group of all my guest appearances on other channels, and I have like over 60 guest appearances. So if you want to see me on other channels, check that out. I want to remind everyone to rock out, frog on, and pogo, and let us know what you think about Deep Purple. What are your favorite songs? You can list them in the comments below. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. We'll see you shortly in our next video. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks for coming on, Joey.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you.
Bye bye.